The sun was setting over a small village, casting a warm orange glow over the streets and homes. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the gentle chirping of birds. In a cozy little house on the edge of the village, a dog named Max was lying by the window, watching the world outside. He was a gentle soul, with a fluffy coat and big brown eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Max loved to watch the world go by, and he spent most of his days lounging in the sunbeams that streamed through the window. His owner, a kind old woman named Sarah, would often sit with him and read a book or simply enjoy the peacefulness of the moment. As the sun began to set, Sarah would get up and take Max for a walk around the village, and he would trot happily by her side, taking in all the sights and smells. As they walked, the sky would turn pink and purple, and the stars would start to twinkle like diamonds in the sky. Max loved the way the world looked at this time of day, and he would often stop and gaze up at the sky in wonder. Sarah would smile and scratch behind his ears, saying, "You're a dreamer, Max, aren't you?" And Max would wag his tail and give her a gentle nuzzle, as if to say, "Yes, I am." One evening, as they were walking by the village pond, Max caught sight of something that made him stop and stare. The water was calm and still, reflecting the trees and sky like a perfect mirror. And in the reflection, Max saw a dog that looked just like him, staring back with big brown eyes. Max's tail wagged tentatively as he approached the water's edge, and he peered into the reflection, trying to understand what he was seeing. The reflected dog seemed to be staring back at him, its eyes locked onto Max's. Max tilted his head to one side, trying to make sense of this strange and fascinating sight. Sarah smiled and sat down beside him, putting a gentle hand on his fur. "What do you see, Max?" she asked softly. Max whined softly, as if trying to explain the wonder of it all. And then, in a soft voice, Sarah said, "Perhaps it's just your reflection, Max. Perhaps it's just you, looking back at yourself." Max looked up at her, and then back at the water, his eyes filled with a deep and peaceful curiosity. The stars were starting to shine brighter now, and the world was growing quieter. The sound of the wind through the trees was like a gentle lullaby, rocking Max into a state of calm and wonder. He lay down beside Sarah, his eyes fixed on the reflection in the water, and let the peacefulness of the moment wash over him. As they sat there, the world slowed down, and the only sound was the gentle lapping of the water against the shore. The reflected dog was still staring back at Max, its eyes shining in the fading light. Max felt a sense of connection to this other dog, as if they were two old friends, meeting again after a long time. He felt a sense of peace and tranquility, as if the world had slowed down, and all that was left was the gentle sound of the water and the soft glow of the stars. And as he gazed into the reflection, Max felt his eyes growing heavy, his breath slowing down, and his heart filling with a deep and peaceful sense of calm. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of crickets provided a soothing background melody. Max's ears were relaxed, and his tail was still, as he gazed into the reflection. Sarah stroked his fur, her touch gentle and calming. "You're a thoughtful dog, Max," she whispered. "You see the world in a way that's all your own." Max looked up at her, his eyes shining with a deep intelligence. He seemed to understand that she was trying to tell him something important, but he wasn't quite sure what it was. As they sat there, a soft breeze rustled the leaves of the trees, causing the stars to twinkle like diamonds scattered across the sky. The world was quiet, and the only sound was the gentle lapping of the water against the shore. Max felt his eyelids growing heavy, but he didn't want to look away from the reflection. It was as if he was mesmerized by the calm and peacefulness of the moment. Sarah smiled and leaned back on her elbows, her eyes fixed on the stars. "It's a beautiful night, Max," she said softly. "A night for dreaming and wondering." As they sat there, a figure appeared on the path that wound its way around the pond. It was an old man, with a kind face and a gentle smile. He was walking slowly, his eyes fixed on the ground, and his hands clasped behind his back. Max's ears perked up, and he watched the old man approach. The old man looked up and saw Max and Sarah sitting by the pond. He smiled and nodded, his eyes twinkling with kindness. "Good evening," he said softly. "It's a beautiful night, isn't it?" Sarah smiled and nodded, and the old man sat down beside them, his eyes fixed on the reflection in the water. The three of them sat there in silence, watching the stars twinkle to life in the sky. The old man pulled out a small pipe and began to play a soft, melancholy tune. The music was like a gentle stream, flowing smoothly and calmly through the night air. Max's ears relaxed, and his eyes grew heavy as he listened to the music. The reflection in the water seemed to be listening too, its eyes fixed on Max with a deep and peaceful intensity. As the music came to an end, the old man smiled and nodded. "That's a lullaby," he said softly. "A song to help you sleep." Max looked up at him, his eyes shining with gratitude. The old man reached out and stroked his fur, his touch gentle and soothing. "You're a lucky dog, Max," he said. "You have a wonderful home and a kind owner. You have everything you need to be happy." Max wagged his tail and leaned into the old man's touch. He felt a sense of peace and contentment, as if the world had slowed down, and all that was left was the gentle sound of the music and the soft glow of the stars. The night air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of crickets provided a soothing background melody. Max's eyes were growing heavy, and his breath was slowing down. He was feeling sleepy, and the world was becoming quieter and more peaceful. The old man stood up and nodded to Sarah. "I'll leave you two to enjoy the night," he said softly. "It's time for me to go home." Sarah smiled and thanked him for the music. The old man smiled and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Max watched him go, and then looked back at the reflection in the water. The reflected dog was still staring back at him, its eyes shining with a deep and peaceful intensity. Max felt a sense of connection to this other dog, as if they were two old friends, meeting again after a long time. He felt a sense of peace and tranquility, as if the world had slowed down, and all that was left was the gentle sound of the water and the soft glow of the stars. The night air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of crickets provided a soothing background melody. Max's eyes were growing heavier, and his breath was slowing down. He was feeling sleepy, and the world was becoming quieter and more peaceful. Sarah sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the reflection in the water. She was smiling softly, and her hands were folded in her lap. The reflected dog was still staring back at Max, its eyes shining with a deep and peaceful intensity. As the minutes passed, the stars twinkled brighter in the sky. The moon was full, and it cast a silver glow over the pond. The water was calm and still, reflecting the beauty of the night. Max's ears were relaxed, and his tail was no longer wagging. He was feeling calm and sleepy, and the world was becoming quieter and more peaceful. Sarah's eyes were growing heavy, and her head was nodding forward. She was feeling sleepy too, and the peacefulness of the night was wrapping itself around her. The sound of the crickets grew softer, and the scent of the flowers became sweeter. The night air was filled with a deep and peaceful silence. Max's eyes were closed, and his breath was slow and steady. He was asleep, and the world was quiet and still. Sarah's head nodded forward, and she fell asleep beside him. The two of them were surrounded by the peacefulness of the night and the beauty of the pond. The reflection in the water was still staring back, its eyes shining with a deep and peaceful intensity. But it was no longer just a reflection, it was a part of the night, a part of the peacefulness that surrounded Max and Sarah. The stars twinkled brighter in the sky, and the moon cast a silver glow over the pond. The water was calm and still, reflecting the beauty of the night. The world was quiet and still, and everything was at peace. As the night wore on, the silence grew deeper. The sound of the crickets faded away, and the scent of the flowers became a gentle whisper. The stars twinkled softly in the sky, and the moon cast a gentle glow over the pond. Max and Sarah were asleep, surrounded by the peacefulness of the night. The world was quiet and still, and everything was at peace. The reflection in the water was no longer visible, but its presence was still felt. It was a part of the night, a part of the peacefulness that surrounded Max and Sarah. The night air was filled with a deep and peaceful silence. The world was quiet and still, and everything was at peace. Max and Sarah were asleep, surrounded by the beauty of the pond and the peacefulness of the night. The stars twinkled softly in the sky, and the moon cast a gentle glow over the water. The world was calm and still, and everything was quiet. The peacefulness of the night had wrapped itself around Max and Sarah, and they were safe and sound in its embrace. The night was dark and quiet, and the world was at peace. Max and Sarah were asleep, and everything was still.